President, I ask unanimous consent that the quorum call be lifted.
Without objection, the senator from Texas is recognized.
Mr. President, I have a modification of my amendment at the desk and ask that for its immediate consideration.
The amendment will be so modified.
Thank you. And I suggest the absence of quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
The federal aviation bill that the Senate is working on would reauthorize the FAA for 2 years, implement a satellite-based air traffic control system, and expand passenger rights. This debate expected to continue through the week. Amendment votes continue in the House on fiscal 2011 spending for the federal government. The Associated Press reporting that President Obama has won a showdown on one of those votes to kill a $3 billion alternative engine for the Pentagon's next-generation fighter jet. The vote was 233 to 198. The Associated Press continuing that the move was a loss for House Speaker John Boehner of Ohio, whose state reaped thousands of jobs from the engine built by General Electric and Rolls-Royce. While we wait for a senator to speak here in the Senate, more about what's happening in the House. Speaker John Boehner has said that the cuts in a bill to fund the government from March 4th until September 30th is a down payment on deficit reduction. But in a look ahead to what may happen if the bill does move to the Senate, Reuters writing that Senate Appropriations Committee Chairman Daniel Inouye lashed out at the House bill, signaling that he would kill it before it could reach President Obama's desk, saying, quote, "Many of the reductions proposed by the House were not made because programs were ineffective or wasteful, but out of a desire to meet arbitrary dollar figures cited during a political campaign." That a quote from Senator Inouye.
Senator from Alabama.
I ask that the quorum call be dispensed with.
Without objection, the senator is recognized.
But asked to speak in morning business.
Without objection, the senator is recognized.
Mr. President, we had a sort of a dust-up, I guess you could say, in the Budget Committee yesterday with Mr. Lieu, who is the Office of Management and Budget, and a very likable individual, but we had a very serious disagreement, a fundamental matter that I don't think can be brushed over and needs to be confronted and settled. There's only one way to settle it, I believe, and that's for Mr. Lieu and the President to cease saying their budget does not add to the debt, and it somehow changes the trajectory on which we're going. Mr. Lieu on Sunday morning program said our budget will get us over the next several years to the point where we can look the American people in the eye and say we're not adding to the debt anymore. Our budget will get us to the point where we can look the people in the eye and say we're not adding to the debt anymore. We're spending money that we have each year, and then we can work to bring down our national debt. Now, that's my goal. I believe that's achievable, but it is clear this budget doesn't do that. Troubling, additionally, was the President in his radio address Saturday said the same thing, and then again yesterday while we were having this discussion, presumably at a similar time, the President said this: "What my budget does is to put forward some tough choices, some significant spending cuts, so that by the middle of this decade, 2015, our annual spending will match our annual revenues. Our annual spending will match our annual revenues. We will not be adding more to the national debt." That is an unequivocal statement, no matter what. And it can have only one meaning to American citizens who hear it, that his budget calls for a situation in which our annual spending will match our annual revenues and will not be adding to the national debt. Now, those of us who've been wrestling with a budget know how hard it is. I believe we can achieve that in 10 years, but it is very hard. I have to admit, I wish it weren't. Chairman, presiding officers on the Budget Committee knows how hard that would be. It would be a heroic effort. I think we can do it. I think the American people are ready to do it, but it's not easy. So the President says that's what we're going to do. And that's his budget, and that's his plan. But sadly, it's not correct. And I asked Mr. Lieu, was he not concerned and was not this misleading to the American people who heard it? And he refused to say his statement was misleading. So what does the budget do? These are the numbers in his budget, the document that they presented to us, written by the White House, the President's budget he's required by law to submit to Congress. And this is what happens to the debt. The quote up there again is, we will not be adding more to the national debt. We add more under his plan to the national debt every single year. And the numbers are stunning in size. And they're consistent. And unfortunately, in the outer years of his 10-year budget, his numbers show the annual deficit increasing, not going down. And so this is what it amounts to in terms of total debt. Now, so his plan, by his own budget that they submitted to us, would add, without dispute, $13 trillion in new debt, doubling it to 26. It started out at 13. In 10 years, it doubles to 26. So how can this possibly be a position in which you will not be adding more to the debt? What world are we living in? What kind of fantastical accounting situation can occur that we could make such a statement as that? So I'm going to ask my colleagues in the Senate, any single one of them that can defend this statement, I'd like them to come down here and do so. Otherwise, we need to call on the President to be honest with the American people. We have a serious debt crisis. To waltz out there at a press conference yesterday, to go on, send out to speak on his radio program on Saturday, or to have his budget director Sunday, and even at our committee hearing yesterday, insist that somehow they're not adding to the debt, is not a way to begin a dialogue about how to confront the serious problems this country has. I just have to say. So I don't think it's a little bitty matter. I don't think it's subject to gentleman disagreement. I don't think it's subject to anything other than black and white. Yes or no. Is that an accurate statement or not? It's not true. The debt is added to every year. And in fact, President Bush was criticized for his deficits, and I think rightly so. The highest deficit he ever had was $460 billion. The lowest deficit in the 10 years by the President's own budget document he sent to us is over $600 billion. The lowest. It averages $720 billion a year in added debt. This is why we're on a dangerous course. And so the essence of what we're talking about is, can we get off this wrong road? Can we get on the road to prosperity? Can we get on the road to progress that gets us out of the debt disaster area we're heading? Let me just read a couple of things, because this is the real test of the budget. We can argue over the finer details, but the question is, can we continue at the rate we're going? Now, what I would say about the budget is that these numbers, this $13 trillion added debt, is what was being predicted before. It's, according to the President, it would have been 14. He's reduced it to 13, which is not enough change if it were to happen. But when the Congressional Budget Office independently scores the President's budget, it's going to show that it doesn't have a $1.1 trillion reduction in spending, probably none. Probably no reduction in the debt. So I guess what I'm saying is, this budget keeps us on the course we were on. I don't think that can be disputed. It does not alter the basic debt totals each year than what has been projected. And those are the numbers, the debt totals, that are unsustainable. For example, in 2009, President Obama called the current deficit spending on this basic trend unsustainable himself. and warned of skyrocketing interest rates for consumers if U.S. continues to finance government by borrowing from other countries. This is Bloomberg. Quote, we can't keep on just borrowing from China, Obama said at a town hall meeting in Rio Rancho, New Mexico, outside Albuquerque. Quote, we have to pay down the interest, we have to pay interest on that debt, and that means we're mortgaging our children's future. That's correct. Mr. Bernanke, the chairman of the Federal Reserve Board, warned in June of last year that, quote, the federal budget appears to be on an unsustainable path, close quote. Mr. Geithner, the Secretary of the Treasury, in February, actually February 15th, a couple of days ago on ABC, said this. This is what the Secretary of Treasury said, Mr. Obama's secretary. Quote, our deficits are too high. They are unsustainable. And left unaddressed, these deficits will hurt economic growth and make us weaker as a nation. We have to restore fiscal responsibility and go back to living within our means. Peter Orszag, who was President Obama's Office of Management of Budget, said that the CBO report, he said this June of last summer, concludes that we are on an unsustainable fiscal course. About this, there is no ambiguity. We're on an unsustainable fiscal course. There's no doubt about it, said Mr. Orszag last summer. So what I would say to you is the President's budget does not change that direction, and we have to change it. And we've got to be honest with the American people that we're not changing it. That the President's plan is his plan for the future. He can change the numbers any way he wants to. He can change the trajectory we are on. It's a voluntary thing. The numbers he put forth are his numbers, and they are a call for our country to follow his plan. And so that's not an acceptable plan. It's just not an acceptable plan, and we've got to change it. And briefly, I will add this. Our former chairman of the Federal Reserve Board said in December that it's a little better than 50-50, but not much, that we won't have a debt crisis in this country in 2 to 3 years. Moody's, the organization most famous for rating government debt and private company debt, you know, AAA being the highest rating, Moody's in December sent a warning letter that unless the United States changes its trajectory of debt, that our debt could be downgraded from AAA in less than 2 years. The International Monetary Fund has said we've got to reduce our structural deficits more than Greece. They got to go a 9% improvement. We've got to go 12% improvement. Only Japan, says the International Monetary Fund, is worse off than we are and has to take stronger action. So, this budget is no action at all. It's no alteration of the trajectory. It's unacceptable. As Congressman Ryan said, it's debt on arrival. We cannot pass this budget. It's unthinkable that we would. The American people are ready for change. They're supporting governors and mayors around the country who are making tough choices, bringing their states and cities up to speed and being more effective. They're doing that. These cities aren't ceasing to exist. We increased discretionary spending, non-defense discretionary spending, in the last 2 years under President Obama's leadership and the Democratic majority in both houses, 24%, 12% a year on average. Well, it's 7% a year increase the total budget doubles in 10 years. I guess at 12%, it'd probably double in 6 or 7 years. And this is the trend we're on. So we need to come off of that. We're going to have to reduce those numbers because we don't have the money. But I'll tell you, this economy has vibrancy. It's trying to come out of this recession. If we create some stability and permanence in our rules, eliminate unnecessary regulations, allow our energy prices to be competitive and create more American energy and all the things that make sense to bring down cost and increase productivity, bring this debt under control, we'll be surprised how strong we can bounce back. But this is not the path to do it. This is the unsustainable path that can lead to danger. The closer we get to it, the more dangerous we are. And so I believe it's time to change course. And where we're going to go, I just can't say. I'm rather stunned at the President's budget. I didn't expect a very strong budget, but I expected one that would make a lot more progress than this. So I guess we're all befuddled right now what our choices will be. All of us have got to work at it, though, because the future of our country is at stake. I thank the Chair and will yield the floor.
Mr. President.
The Senator from Oklahoma.
Thank you. Do we have a pending amendment?
Yes, the second-degree Hutchinson amendment to the Inhofe amendment is pending.
All right, thank you. Let me just confine my remarks for a few minutes on how I see where we are from my perspective, and my hope is that I can offer some amendments, at least get them pending, and then discuss with the Chairman. I just discussed them with the ranking member with the disposition of those. I wonder if the Chairman has any comments on that.
I will be objecting to your amendments because you have objected to the pending amendments, and there will be no reason to add more unless you lift your objection.
I told him I would be happy.
I'm very happy to listen to what you have to say.
All right, then I'll be happy. I told Senator Leahy last night I would be happy to lift my objection once my amendments were pending, and we could have a debate on his non-germane amendment.
I think that the order has to be reversed.
If the Chairman will assure me that I'll have the opportunity to, number one, debate Senator Leahy's amendment.
I can't assure that at this point. We have not arrived.
And I will continue with my objection. And
you have amendments that you wish to offer. I think 5. I'm constrained to object to them.
Well, it's interesting. We have a non-germane amendment that is outside the bounds of the Constitution, doing something that's not the role of the federal government, that we're going to expand the cost at a time when we're bankrupt, and 5 germane amendments that actually lower the cost of the Airport Improvement Fund, actually help next generation in terms of money, help preserve the Airport Trust Fund, and we're not going to be allowed to bring them up. And if that's the way we're going to operate, then you can count on me knowing procedure around here that we will have a very difficult time moving ever to a Leahy amendment. Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, I came to the floor to discuss what we're trying to do and to be helpful in moving that along. I've now heard that I will not be allowed to offer these amendments or at least bring them up. I'm going to discuss each one of them, and I will object to any unanimous consent moving forward on any area until we have an opportunity, as the Senate tradition is, to have a debate and bring amendments up. If we're not allowed to do that, then I'm sure we're going to start going backwards again. Passing an FAA authorization bill, as the Chairman and Ranking Member have tried to do, is a significant priority for Congress. We have a system of air traffic control that needs to be modernized. We have monies that are putting forward to that. We've not had the oversight, according to the Inspector Generals, that is necessary for those programs. In this bill, we have authorizations for monies that are not priorities for this country at the time we're facing a $1.6 trillion deficit. We have an unemployment rate in excess of 9%, and interest rates are going to rise in the future. And my amendments, which I'm happy to have voted on and voted down, lead us to a path that secures and enhances the Airport Improvement Fund and the trust fund, makes common sense that 99% of American people would agree with, excludes Alaska because they are a totally different animal when it comes to essential air services requirements, and will, in fact, enhance the trust fund. So I'm very sorry that the chairman refuses to allow my amendments to come up, but I will offer them and have him object in total. What has to happen with every program in this country is wasteful spending, low priority spending, and duplicative spending has to be eliminated. And although I think the chairman and ranking member did a fairly good job on this bill, there's areas where we can eliminate wasteful spending, there's areas where we can eliminate duplicative spending, and there's areas where we can say this can't be a priority now given the financial fix that we find ourselves in. During our current budget deficit, the revenues coming into the Airport Trust Fund are lower than expected, and we have this very real need on next-gen development. Congress has to limit somewhere and make a priority next-gen. And I think they've tried to go in that direction, and these amendments will do such a thing. The first amendment I'd like to talk about is the Airport Improvement Federal Cost Share Reduction Amendment. We now have, across this country, money being spent on low-priority projects in airports that have very little traffic or minimal traffic, and we're not spending money on the airports where we have, and for safety and for the airports where we have the majority of funding, of traffic. We've seen one program in particular where billions of dollars of low-priority projects have been spent. And I would just tell you is if we're ever going to get out of the jam we're in, some common sense has to be applied that we can't do everything that everybody wants. And there's going to have to be some sacrifice in these areas. The whole goal of this First Amendment is to discourage low-priority, wasteful aviation projects that would not be funded by increasing the non-federal cost share to just 25% over 3 years. In other words, it's 5% now, and so it's 95% of the government money, and all we do is over 3 years move it to where you have to pay 25%. It's going to discourage a lot of low-priority projects because the communities or the states have to have a greater participation. There is no program in the federal government that has a grant process and a funding process where the federal government pays 95% other than this program. Not one. So we're encouraging money to be wasted on low-priority projects by maintaining 95% federal funding. And this gives us 3 years to adjust to what 75%, which probably should be 50%, but 75%, given our fiscal issues that we find. When non-primary airports could initially have up to 90% of their airport improvement projects covered by the federal government, in recent years we raised that under Public Law 108-176 to 95%. This is 20% higher than the same cost share for other airports qualifying for this $4 billion program. It's $4 billion a year. And unless you think that I'm too critical, let me give you some examples. 2 flights a day, commercial, non-commercial flights, just 2 private flights a day are the average for Kentucky's Williamsburg-Whitley County Airport. We spent $11 million there to build an airport with a 5,500 lighted runway, a colonial-style terminal with white column, and hundreds of acres for growth. Even doesn't have 1 airline passenger and averages 2 flights a day. Now tell me, if you ask the average American, should we spend $11 million there, or should we make sure that we can take care of the kids that don't have what they need in this country? Should we spend $11 million there or not borrow another $11 million from the Chinese? Should we spend $11 million there, or should we, in fact, make sure the Airport Trust Fund has the money to do the high-priority projects like large airports or like NextGen? Which one? Which one would the average American think we should do? And lest you think that I'm picking on Kentucky, Halliburton Field in Duncan, Oklahoma got $700,000 for a pilot room and a reception room. We're building for private aviation with taxpayer money, low priority. We're building a nice pilot room and a reception room for the private pilots that fly in there. Now tell me how that's a priority in our country today. That's my own state. We're sending money down a hole because we refuse to make tough choices. And all this amendment does is say, let's move it from 95% over 3 years to 75% so that we don't get the lower priority projects funded because we are too generous with what the federal government contributes. Chairman may not like it, but I bet you the average American thinks it's a pretty smart thing to do, given the state that we're in. You know, all bets are off on the politics of this. I've never been accustomed to playing the politics of it at all. But there are just as many people on the left who think we ought to cut spending as there are on the right. America gets it. The only place that doesn't get it is here. And this doesn't do anything except enhance what can be done for higher priority issues within our aviation community. That's all it does. It's a small, simple step. And by rejecting or not allowing an amendment like this to come forward, what we're saying is we're going to keep kicking the can down the road. We're not going to pay attention to the American public. We're going to hide from the reality that is coming very soon for this country that will undermine. We won't have any money to put into airport improvement programs. We won't have the money to fund a NextGen program. It will become a low-priority program unless we wake up and start doing what the rest of America recognizes we have to, and that's start living within our means. The next amendment is an amendment that's a bipartisan amendment between the senator from Alaska and myself. It's an earmark rescission amendment. And all it says is the earmarks that have been out there that the money hadn't been spent over 9 years, given 1 year for the agencies to decide whether they think that's so, should be rescinded. It puts $500 million, $500 million at a minimum, back into the public treasury. Now, why would we not want to do that? We got $2.6 million sitting in Atlanta that can't be spent on anything except the 1996 Olympics in Atlanta. Why wouldn't we take that $2.6 million back? It was earmarked. It didn't get spent. But it's sitting out there in a hole, and we can reverse this. The estimates are we'll save $1 billion. The conservative estimate at a minimum, $500 million. We're not going to allow this amendment to be considered. We're not going to allow it to be considered. It makes no sense. The next amendment calls on us to sacrifice a little bit. The Essential Air Service program has multiple subsidies where people can easily drive an hour and 20 minutes and get to a regional airport that doesn't require any subsidies. And all this amendment does is move it to 100 miles from where it is today, which is 70. Moves it to 100 miles and said if you're less than 100 miles, you ought to have to not be eligible for us, sometimes to the tune of $400 or $500 per person per flight, to have a subsidized flight when you could drive 70 minutes, 80 minutes, and have access to a ton of flights. Again, it's priority. Is it priority for us to continue to spend money on a small group of airports, 36, that in no way pay for themselves, that are readily accessible, throughout the country to major airports and spend the kind of money that we're spending. Another amendment says that if you have less than 10 enplanements a day, maybe we ought to rethink about whether or not we're subsidizing essential air service. So there's two amendments on essential air service. All they're saying is, will we make the tough decisions? We can't do everything we want to do. Is it nice that we have an essential air service program so some people don't have to drive an hour? I guess so. What are we willing to sacrifice to get our house in order? And so these are little bitty amendments, but will send a wonderful signal to the American public is that we get it. We absolutely get it. And that because we get it, we're going to make choices about priorities. We're going to enhance the Airport Trust Fund. We're going to enhance the Airport Improvement Program because we're going to take lower priorities off the board, which is exactly what they want us to do. They want us to focus on the big things, the important things, and they want us to cut the spending that's not absolutely necessary. And I can tell you it's not absolutely necessary that we subsidize to the tune some of these smaller areas that are very close to regional airports or have less than 10 passengers a day. It's not absolutely. So will we ask some Americans to sacrifice? Yeah. But you know what's going to happen? We're all going to have to sacrifice before we get through this. The problem is the resistance in this chamber and in this city is that we don't want it. We don't want to make the hard choices. So it's disappointing that we've not done that. We're going to have to do that. And we're either going to do it or somebody from the outside is going to tell us what we're going to do. And then a Fifth Amendment, and I know that the chairman will be against this amendment because it's his program that I'm trying to eliminate. But in the year 2000, we created another program called the Small Community Air Services Program, and this is an amendment to repeal that. It was geared to help smaller communities to enhance their air service in addition to essential air service. In other words, to make it more effective, to try to promote the utilization, which is a good idea, except it's not working. And when we see the funds from this program after the grant's over, you know what happens? Airlines leave. They don't stay, they leave. So we're just kind of spending money in a market that won't sustain what we're trying to put there, and then we're putting more money on top of it to try to promote it, and when it doesn't work, what happens is we lose the essential air service anyhow. And it's happened in Oklahoma. The other thing I would tell you is that in this day and time that we live, we have to have an FAA bill. We can't continue to not have an FAA bill. So even if my amendments are voted down, considering that they're going to get a vote, I'll probably support this bill. But it should be noted that we haven't gone far enough, and we haven't made all the tough choices that we need to make, and I'm highly disturbed that we take amendments that are absolutely germane and say they can't be offered because a time agreement, even though it's been agreed to, isn't agreed to yet in terms of the formal, because the senator from Vermont isn't on the floor. We can't offer amendments. So I'm going to offer the amendments and let the chairman object, and then I'll utilize the procedures that are available to me as a member of the Senate as I do that. I'd like the unanimous consent to set aside the pending amendment, call up amendment number 91.
Is there an objection?
There is objection.
Senator from West Virginia.
And I would
objection is heard.
I would say to the senator from Oklahoma, most of the pending amendments, which are now pending, have been objected to from your side of the aisle. And I don't have any objection to looking at some of your amendments and seeing if we can vote on them. But I can't do that right now. Obviously can't give you any kind of consent right now. And, you know, it's a very difficult situation. I mean, if there's a sort of rolling veto type situation, if objection is made, we can't have votes on amendments which are pending. And, you know, I am willing to look at what you have suggested. As you talk through some of them, they sort of stung pretty hard in my state of West Virginia. But I'm willing to look at it. But I can't do that without consent from folks on my side. So for the time being, I object.
Objection is heard.
Well, I thank the chairman, but I'm going to go on and ask for the request and allow him to object to the further amendments that I have, so it'll be in the record that I did attempt to offer them. I'd ask unanimous consent to set aside the pending amendment, call up amendment number 80.
I object.
I'd ask
Objection is heard.
Unanimous consent to set aside the pending amendment, call up amendment number 81.
I object.
Objection is heard.
I'd ask unanimous consent to call up amendment number 82 and set the pending amendment aside.
I object.
Objection is heard.
Well, I thank the chairman for his words. I will take him at his word, and I will work with him and allow him to look at some of these. There's only 2 airports in West Virginia that this would have an impact on. Both of them are less than 75 miles from a regional airport, and they both have minimal employments daily. Minimal. They're over 10, but not far over that. So the point is we ought to help who we can help, and it ought to make economic sense that we should do it. And they're not targeted because there's 36 airports in here that actually the average American would say, it's nuts to spend the kind of money we are. So I thank you for the time, and I notice the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
Some basics on the Federal Aviation Programs Bill that the Senate is working on. It would reauthorize the FAA for 2 years and also implement a satellite-based air traffic control system. On the other side of the Capitol, the House is expecting another late night tonight, wading through amendments, about 600 amendments that have been submitted to a measure to fund the federal government for the rest of this fiscal year. Congressional Quarterly writing that the open amendment process is a departure from recent years and part of the promise by Republican leaders to allow more members' participation in the legislative process in the House. The Senate still working on federal aviation programs. No amendment votes so far today. Still waiting for a senator to come to the floor to speak. Right now, live on C-SPAN 3, Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner talking about the fiscal 2012 budget, the budget for the Treasury Department. We can see that now on C-SPAN 3. Earlier today, Defense Secretary Gates testified about the Pentagon budget. You can see that at cspan.org. And Secretary Gates will be back on Capitol Hill tomorrow morning before the Senate Armed Services Committee at 9:30 a.m. Eastern, also on C-SPAN 3.
Mr. Alexander.
A vote could happen tomorrow dealing with landing slots at Reagan National Airport, an issue that has delayed Senate action on the FAA programs bill. In appearing before the House Armed Services Committee today, Defense Secretary Gates said that he would support a larger U.S. military presence in Iraq next year than currently envisioned with the scheduled departure of U.S. troops at the end of 2011. He warned that the planned withdrawal would leave Iraqi skies undefended and the country's military capabilities significantly degraded. Secretary Gates said that under the current plan, the Pentagon would maintain an office at the U.S. Embassy in Iraq and staff it with about 150 military personnel, as well as a number of civilians and contractors. But no U.S. combat forces are currently scheduled to remain beyond the end of 2011. Secretary Gates was on Capitol Hill today testifying on the 2012 budget request for the Pentagon. He'll be before the Senate Armed Services Committee tomorrow morning talking about the budget. That's at 9:30 Eastern Time, live on C-SPAN 3.
Ms. Ayotte.
While the Senate is in a quorum call, here's some news updates for you. The Obama administration has won a vote in the House today to kill a costly alternative engine for the Pentagon's next-generation fighter jet. The 233 to 192 vote is a setback for House Speaker John Boehner and his state of Ohio, where the alternative engine is made by General Electric and Rolls-Royce. Also, the Federal Reserve officials are sounding more optimistic than they did in November. In a new update, they predict the economy will grow between 3.4% and 3.9% this year, up from their previous forecast of 3 to 3.6%. And they don't expect high inflation. But they don't foresee much improvement in the unemployment figure. They're saying the jobless rate is likely to end the year close to its current level of 9%. You're watching live coverage of the Senate floor here on C-SPAN 2. Today, members are considering the FAA reauthorization bill. The House is also in session today. Members are discussing 2011 federal spending. You can watch that on C-SPAN. And over on C-SPAN 3, live coverage of Secretary Geithner's testimony before the House Budget Committee.
aggressive.
During this quorum call at the Senate, just a news update for you. Congressional friends of Representative Gabrielle Giffords, the Tucson Congresswoman shot in January, are holding a campaign fundraiser next month for her 2012 election. Democrat Senator Kristen Gillibrand of New York, Representative Adam Smith of Washington, and Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz of Florida are co-chairs of the March 15th reception. It'll be held in Washington for the wounded Arizona Congresswoman. This is live coverage of the U.S. Senate here on C-SPAN 2. Members are considering the FAA reauthorization bill. Over on the House, the members continue their consideration of the continuing resolution, which will fund the federal government until September. If it's approved, it will then go to the Senate with the hopes that the chamber will pass it before the existing continuing resolution expires on March 4th. Earlier today, the House interrupted work on the CR to vote on a rule to debate the USA Patriot Act extension. Yesterday, the Senate passed an amendment version of the act, shortening the length of the extension from December to May, and sent it back to the House for approval. Provisions in the bill include business records, roving wiretaps, and individual terrorists acting as agents of foreign powers. Of course, you can watch the House live on C-SPAN.